All right, Boker Tov. Today we are going to learn about the halachas of the 9 days, which begin this coming Tuesday night and Wednesday, as well as some of the halachas of Tisha. Let us get cracking. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, Misha Nichnas Av Mematim B'Simcha. Actually, we find by Adar, it says Kishem Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha, Kishem Nichnas Av Mematim B'Simcha, which means when the month of Av starts, we limit our joy. Why is this important? Because letting us know that in general you're supposed to be happy. Right? You're supposed to limit the joy that we usually have and still be joyful during Av, but in a limited way. Okay? It says Memat, it doesn't say not to be happy. It says Memat is simple. It's supposed to be greater parameters around the Simcha. Now the reason for this is that the month of Av it's not a great time for Klal Yisrael. One reason that the restrictions begin from Rosh Chodesh is that when the Beis HaMikdash stood, Rosh Chodesh was a Yom Tiv when we brought special karbanos, and all of Klal Yisrael came together. We were unified, and we're saddened that now that the Beis HaMikdash isn't here, so we start the morning from Rosh Chodesh. Note what I just said. We were like, oh, a 3-week start Shivas B'Tammuz, and it ends with Tisha B'Av. What we just pointed out is, yeah, but where's the 9 days? What's with 9 days at the end being anything different? It's different because Rosh Chodesh was, at the beginning of the month, was a very special time, specifically in the Beis HaMikdash. So coming to the month when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, we're grasping, we're understanding that we're noticing a greater loss with no longer having that opportunity. Many people have a custom, like we do here in Shul, to refer to the month of Av as Menachem Av. The word Menachem is to comfort, and we're giving each other a bracha that it should be a month of comfort and not a month of tremendous mourning. Okay.
Is that the reason a lot of babies are Menachem?
Yes. It means to comfort.
During this.
Yeah, it means to comfort. That's it is. You'll find that name more often around this. Birthdays around this time, that name does come out more.
Like you.
No, like me. Except I was the second day of Elul, so I missed it by a
Right.
couple of days. But, okay. So let's get into some halachas of the 9 days. If a person has a court date with a non-Jew, one should push it off till after the 9 days have passed, since it's not a time of good mazel. Some say push it off all the way till after Rosh Chodesh Elul. Try not to do it at all in the month of Av. Some say it could be in the month of Av, but the 15th day of Av, Tu B'Av, is a good siman, so try to push it off till after the 15th. So again, this is ideally. The same thing would hold true with non-emergency surgical procedures. Okay, one should try not to undergo a surgery during the 9 days as well, unless obviously there is an urgent matter to it. If there is any sort of urgency, or if you push it off a little bit, it means much further down the road, then one is even allowed to have surgery on Tisha B'Av. But again, this is in an ideal world because it's not great mazel. So we want to push it off to a time where there's better mazel for these things to be successful. The Shulchan Aruch writes that one should lessen their business dealings from Rosh Chodesh Av until after Tisha B'Av. However, our custom is that regular business dealings are permitted, since and what we try to refrain from is dealings of joy. That's really what we refrain from. But most people, and the custom seems to be to go about our regular business dealings during the 9 days. The Shulchan Aruch also says that from Rosh Chodesh Av, again starting this coming Wednesday until after Tisha B'Av, we don't do any sort of joyous. We don't have any sort of joyous involvement in our homes. So this means we don't construct a joyous building. Meaning, let's say you want to add a beautiful design, or to even paint a home. We don't paint homes during the 9 days, even if we're wallpapering it. Okay, it's like, what about wallpaper? It's not paint yet, but it's accomplishing the same thing. It's adding beautification. It's the wrong time to be adding beautification to our homes when we're supposed to be focused on the fact that Hashem's house has been destroyed, and there's no longer a Beis Hamikdash, not to install carpet, install things where are not basic needs. However, structurally damaged walls could be repaired. Any construction which is essential in a home is allowed. The place can go so far as to say, if let's say somebody's home is too small and they want to put an extension on for their basic needs, you could do that sort of construction. There's no problem, because you're not doing it for joy, you're doing it for basic needs. However, the painting and the wallpapering and things that are adding greater beauty to the home, that part of the process one should refrain from. Also, if one hired a non-Jew before Rosh Chodesh Av to do the project, so then that non-Jewish person is allowed to continue into the 9 days. Okay, because they're acting on their own. They have a achrayus, they have a responsibility to get the job done, and they're doing it on their own accord. So such a thing would be mutter. However, like we're saying, things that are now going to add to the joy, such a thing we should try to refrain from it during the 9 days. Okay. Building for a mitzvah is also allowed, so this is something which is important. I don't know how many homes have this. There is somebody, I just had a conversation with somebody in our shul who is chayav on this. The Torah says there's an obligation to put a makkah. A makkah is a fence around any raised area that's higher than 10 tefachim. You have to fence it in, otherwise there's danger. So for a building of a mitzvah, let's say somebody has a roof that is meant to be walked upon, like a top floor penthouse with people go up on the roof, or somebody, except the community, the person in our community who I was dealing with, they realized that their porch doesn't have a railing around it, and it really does fall 10 feet, 10 tefachim, right, 40 inches or so on the sides. There's a chiyuv to put up a mitzvah. You have to put up, biblical obligation to put up this protective railing. This type of construction is mutter, is permitted to do during the 9 days. A very common shiloh that comes up is, what about landscaping, mowing one's yard, things of that sort. So any sort of planting, gardening that brings one's joy is not allowed to be done during the 9 days. Okay, so to beautify one's lawn is not allowed. However, overgrown grass is permitted to be trimmed if it either impedes one's normal walking, one's normal functionality, or if it's just a chil Hashem, it's just like it's overgrown and that yard needs to be mowed. Ideally, we should try to do it before the 9 days, but if it's overgrown, it's permitted. But if I'm just doing it to beautify the lawn, I like my lawn well kept, and it's not overgrown though, so then one should not do that during the 9 days. Watering plants is permitted during the 9 days. That sustains one's plants, and that's not adding, and that's mutter. Yes?
What about getting an area ready to paint? Like you have to scrape off the outside of our house, our windows need to be outside of needs to be painted. But I just scrape down all of the paint before I paint.
So you're not beautifying.
So I can scrape off the paint during the 9 days?
Yeah, correct.
No.
Correct, because that's not an action of beautification. Okay. Now, according to Ashkenazi custom, okay, so those of us who follow the Ramah, clothing may not be washed during the 9 days, even if I'm not going to wear it till after Tisha B'Av. Okay? Doing laundry, even though nowadays we have washing machines, is considered a distraction from mourning. It's considered an avodah. Even nowadays, laundry is an avodah. It takes work. It takes work. And this applies to ironing or washing. Clothing worn for a mitzvah is allowed to be washed and is allowed to be ironed. And again, the reason for this prohibition is because doing laundry shows that I'm not thinking about the mourning of Yerushalayim. I'm not thinking about the Avedas. Others say that wearing freshly laundered clothing brings joy. So practically speaking, we don't wash our clothes during the 9 days, and we also don't wear freshly laundered garments during the 9 days. Okay, so practically speaking, what do? So either we try to make sure we have enough before the 9 days, and we don't need to do laundry. Make sure you have at least 9 sets of undergarments and other enough clothing, enough garments that are washed to carry us through. Now, sometimes it's not possible for various reasons, whatever those reasons might be. So, if it's not possible, undergarments you don't need to do anything to. Regular garments, one should at least make sure that they're not fresh and enjoyable to put on. So this can be done in a number of ways. When I was a younger kid than I am now, Erev Tisha B'Av in camp, I was in camp my entire life, so Erev Tisha B'Av in camp, they would set aside time for all the bunks to go wear all your clothing and to keep changing every 20 minutes so that all your clothing are no longer fresh. You put it back in your drawer, and then you had your unfresh clothing to wear during the 90s. And you had guys walking around camp wearing like six shirts at a time, you know, and it was like it became like a game, you know. This was like the Erev Tisha B'Av activity, and this is how we learned the halacha. It was rightfully so. It's fine. Now you don't need to do such a thing. You don't need to walk around looking with all our clothing being worn prior. But it is important that our clothing is not fresh during the 9 days. So if one does have clean clothing that's fresh and good, one should do something, even if it's not prior, but during the 9 days, to make sure that when you put it on, it's not fresh. There's many ways to do this. Either some people will say throw it on the floor for a few minutes, you know, then when you put it on, it's not so geshmak. Some people will say to put it in it can be clean, but throw it into your laundry hamper. Leave it in your dirty laundry hamper for a little bit. And when you pull it out, it's not so geshmak to put on. Right? It's not dirty, it's still clean. But it was in your laundry hamper. It doesn't have that same, Tide, downy soft smell. You know, the point is it shouldn't be like super fresh. You go ahead.
So you said freshly cleaned, or something that's been hanging in the closet, say, for a month the other morning. That's not really freshly cleaned.
If it's not fresh and it's one of those things that has been hanging out there and maybe even might be a little musty, yeah, there's no problem. It shouldn't be fresh. It shouldn't be. If you putting it on feels fresh, then do something to make it not fresh. The spot cleaning, the Paiskim discuss it. It's interesting because many Paiskim have a problem with it, but the custom is to be lenient. Okay, so this is talking about general washing, but spot cleaning, you're not freshening it up really. You're getting rid of a stain or something like that. So there's no issue. What about washing a sheitel? So there's a discussion in the Paiskim whether a sheitel is considered like clothing, whether it's considered a garment. But the custom of many is to permit this. But I would say it's preferable if one could wait till after Tisha B'Av to get a wash on their sheitel. That would be ideal. But otherwise, it's not a problem. It's mutter to drop off one's clothes at the cleaners before Tisha B'Av. Okay? Before the 9 days. You could drop it off before the 9 days. But some say you should wait till after Tisha B'Av to pick it up. We should not drop it off during the 9 days, because then it's the same as asking a non-Jew. Same way we don't do our laundry during the 9 days. One is not allowed to ask any non-Jewish cleaning help, which is the same as dropping it off at a cleaner. So we don't drop off clothing at a cleaner's either during the 9 days. But it would be mutter on the day prior, Erev Tisha B'Av, Tuesday, you could drop it off, because they could do it before the 9 days to do the washing. Some say ideally wait to pick it up, but it's mutter to pick it up even during that time.
That's what I was going to ask. It's because my husband's suit got ruined in the rain.
Yeah, so it's mutter to pick it up.
Okay.
It's mutter to pick it up. And that's very common. It's because very often because there's a restriction on pleasurable traveling during the 9 days, and a lot of families, their summertime and their time away, maybe they're going to go away for a few days, very often, this is a very common question of what can I do, because we're leaving Motzei Tisha B'Av. We're leaving the morning after, and I got to do my laundry. I've got so much laundry to do, but we're mamish leaving the next morning. So that's a very common question, and many people want to pick up their cleaners. So as long as it was done mutter, done in a mutter setting, one is permitted to pick it up. Okay. It's also better to not launder linen. There's something very geschmack about fresh linen on the bed, but for hygiene, it's okay. Okay, so let's say you have guests coming, or you're changing out the sheets, or the sheets are soiled, there's schwitz on them. So then it's mutter, and it's mutter to wash one linen. Again, anything that has to do with health or hygiene, that's going to be okay. But just to get it fresh, and you know that geschmacka feeling of getting into like a good fresh bed, good fresh linen, that one should refrain from during the 9 days. Okay. Now some poskim say this only applies to clothing that don't often get soiled. So a lot of people are lenient on undergarments, but it is a leniency. Obviously, again, for hygiene, it would be okay. But if one can make sure they have enough undergarments to last them throughout the 9 days, that would be ideal. People are lenient on children's clothing because they get constantly soiled. Washing floors are okay. Shoe shining is okay. We also do not wear Shabbos clothing during the week. Shabbos clothing is like, it's my Shabbos dress, it's my Shabbos suit. And also one refrains from, so far as the Shulchan Aruch actually writes that this coming Shabbos, Shabbos Chazon, many people didn't even wear Shabbos clothes on Shabbos Chazon. Now that's not our custom. Our custom is to wear Shabbos clothing on Shabbos Chazon, but there are many places in Klal Yisrael they don't wear special Shabbos clothing this Shabbos, because to keep that in mind, as well. Okay. Next category of the 9 days, showering. So one of the main issues regarding the 9 days is showering and bathing. So Ashkenazim, we refrain from washing starting from Rosh Chodesh Av. Sfardim, more careful, starting from the week of Tisha B'Av. So it's going to be starting Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Wednesday night, Thursday is Tisha B'Av. But we refrain during the entire 9 days. The reason why we refrain is that washing is generally done for enjoyment. It's very pleasurable. Even my kids, who you cannot convince them to hop into a shower or a bath, the moment they get in, they don't want to get in. Right? And for us as adults too, right? Some people shower twice a day, some people shower once a day. However often people shower, it could be an avodah. Sometimes you're so tired, and sometimes you're just waking up, but you get into that shower, it's like, it's a change, right? It's something very enjoyable and pleasurable. But if there's any reason to wash for health purposes, that washing is allowed, but one should do it in a way that's not so pleasurable. Okay? It should be like a cooler shower. It shouldn't be a geschmack shower. And even when somebody has to shower to wash off schmutz, it should be done in the most minimal way possible. This doesn't apply on Erev Shabbos. Okay? So washing and showering the Kavod Shabbos, you could shower in a regular way, in the regular fashion, but other than that, during the 9 days, one should really only shower in situations where you're washing off schwitz, one's cleaning oneself, or even if somebody's in istinus. I don't know. I could say for myself, if I don't shower at least at night, I don't know, I don't know how well I'm going to sleep. So, but everybody's different. Some people go a few days, people go 2 days. We're all different, and then some people wash their hair every time or wash their body. Like, just be cognizant that it shouldn't be a washing that's for pleasure. Wherever you're at in the area of showering and bathing, children who play and are usually washed every day, there's no restrictions. There's no restrictions on that. We also obviously don't swim during the 9 days for this reason. It's washing off one's body. But again, if somebody for some reason needs to swim for health purposes, it's not ideal. Like, people do cardio. I would recommend during the 9 days, if you can go on a treadmill instead, do that. For some people, for whatever reason, it needs to be in water. It needs to be in water. Okay, it needs to be in water. So however much is done for health and medical reasons, it would be mutter. I would strongly recommend those staying away from deep water, not to do anything in deep water. Okay. We're lenient on water play for kids. Okay, next category, purchasing items during the 9 days. So purchasing new clothing is not allowed during the 9 days. We learned in last week's shir, during the 3 weeks, one is permitted to buy clothing, unless it's very fancy clothing that you make a shachiyanu on. Okay? During the 9 days, we don't purchase any clothing. This applies to anything. Shoes, socks, shirts, suits, undergarments, linens, towels, pants, even garments for children. Even if we're not going to be wearing the garments until after Tisha B'Av, it is one that should not buy it. What about second-hand clothing that's already been purchased, or somebody's giving it to you? Somebody's giving you clothing like a hand-me-down. So then, if it's going to give one pleasure, it's considered new, and one should not wear it. But if it's not going to give one pleasure, and it's good to just have a few more skirts or a few more pairs of shoes that are my size, but they're already worn, so then it's mutter to have. It's mutter to take, and it's mutter to wear during the 9 days. If, however, one does not need to take a loss on this halacha. So, if any clothing that's on sale for a considerable discount, I don't remember if I ended up doing this specifically, but I do recall that we got married on Tu B'Av. So that I got married on the 15th day of Av. And of course, I'm not prepared, right? I'm not looking for my wedding dress. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a suit for my wedding. My wedding's in 2 weeks. I need a suit for my wedding. And I was in Muncie at the time. I don't recall what I did. I do recall one of the things I was thinking, and I don't know if I waited to buy it or not, but there were there's a well-known outlet mall called Woodbury Commons, like 45 minutes from Muncie, and they had a lot of high-end suit stores, and for like suits that you buy for very expensive, you'd get for like $100 in these outlet stores. So I recall talking to my father at the time about, is it mutter for me to go to the outlet stores during the 9 days? Because my wedding was in like a week and a half, and I still didn't have a new suit for the wedding. I don't recall what I actually did. I ended up buying a suit from that outlet mall. I don't recall if I bought it then or not. The reason why I'm saying this is because if you have something that's heavily discounted, it is mutter, it is permitted. Or even an item that you can't get after the 9 days. So this is also something that's common for people who are going to Israel for seminary, or they're just coming back from yeshiva. So it's, they're going to a different country, and in that country, that article of clothing is going to be a lot more expensive. But you're leaving during the 9 days, or you're leaving right after Tisha B'Av. So again, if it's going to cause a financial loss, significant means difference for every person. If it's $1 or $2 more, you're not allowed to buy it during the 9 days. But for somebody who $5 is a big deal, you're allowed to buy it during the 9 days to not have to spend those $5. For somebody who $5 isn't on their radar, so then they would not, and for them to make a price difference is $40, so then they would not be allowed to buy it during the 9 days unless there's a $40 difference. So again, one is not obligated to take a loss. What's a loss? That's going to depend. That's going to depend on the person. It's permitted to buy slippers for Tisha B'Av during the 9 days. We know we don't wear leather shoes. We'll get to this when we get to Halachas of Tisha B'Av. But if somebody needs for a mitzvah, okay, so it's permitted to buy something for Tisha B'Av. person's glasses break, and you don't have other glasses, you can buy new glasses, eyeglasses during the 9 days. You're allowed to return bought items for a refund. We do not fix or tailor clothing during the 9 days, even if it won't be worn until after the 9 days. Although it's permitted to weave as a fun activity, but we don't weave to wear something.
What? Me?
Weave, like needlepoint, okay? So let's say, some women or some people will enjoy just making needlepoint. So to make like a new blanket or something, that's not a problem. That's permitted as a hobby. To do even, a tablecloth, things like that. That would be mutter to do during the 9 days. Sewing on name tags is allowed. If a person, a Jewish tailor or seamstress who earns a livelihood, is allowed to do it during the 9 days. However, they can't do it for other Jews who have a prohibition of having their things sewed. But if you have a tailor shop, you're allowed to stay open and sew clothing for other people. Somebody had their hand raised. No? Okay.
Well, I did kind
Yeah.
of, you were talking about buying your suit, but that was for a mitzvah, wasn't it?
No, because I had a suit. I just wanted a new
So
suit.
getting married isn't considered a mitzvah?
It is, but you don't need the suit. Buying the suit is not a mitzvah. No, I have another suit. It's nice to have a new suit, but that itself is not. The mitzvah can be performed with a different suit. So that's why I didn't consider it a mitzvah. Eating meat and drinking wine also, we don't have that during the 9 days. We explained that in last week's shir as well. After the Churban, after the destruction, people completely stopped until we said this was too much for Klal Yisrael. We refrain from eating meat and drinking wine. However, this does not apply on Shabbos. On Shabbos, we do eat meat and drink wine, but we're not allowed to eat leftovers. So usually, some people will be like, I'll cook an extra piece of chicken. Big deal, I'll have it Sunday night. Right? I'll eat it on Matzah Shabbos, eat it Sunday afternoon. Just keep in mind that there's those leftovers either going into the freezer or into the garbage. So one should be careful with that. The Ramah says, as we mentioned last week as well, the Sudas Mitzvah, like a bris milah, is permitted during the 9 days, like a siyum. Ideally, we mentioned that one should not time their siyum specifically during the 9 days. Although I quoted Rabbi Pesach Kron Shlita, who said it's a beautiful thing to do because it's a way to bring Klal Yisrael together, and that's something that we specifically do want to do during the 9 days. Now, when do the 9 days end? So we'd think that the 9 days would end on Tisha B'Av, right? Because Tisha, 9, B'Av, 9th day of Av. So you start the first day of Rosh Chodesh, and you end 9 days later, that's the 9 days. But the certain restrictions, most of the restrictions actually remain in place until halachic noon, a little after 1 p.m. on the 10th day of Av, because the fire of the Beis Hamikdash continued to burn through that time, and therefore some elements of the laws of mourning do continue until Chatzais of the 10th day.
What about if it's Erev Shabbos?
And it does fall. Anything you need for Shabbos falls off. Eating meat and drinking wine remains on. Right, very good. This year it's going to be Erev Shabbos, but clothing that one does need for Shabbos.
So from
would be
Thursday night already you can...
Correct, very good. Anything you need for Shabbos, thank you. Anything you need for Shabbos does become laundry, bathing, if that's going to be your Shabbos shower, would become mutter. Okay, that's a general overview of the 9 days. Let's get into some of the halachas of Tisha B'Av itself.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
if we have to buy a new kitchen appliance because ours broke on Shabbos,
mutter.
we can buy it?
You need it. It's a basic.
Okay.
It's a basic. If you have if you have something else to use and it's additional, so then wait, right? But if it's something that you're using on a daily basis, so you're using daily and often, I don't know what appliance it is, but it's something.
Dishwasher.
A dishwasher. Let's say you use your dishwasher every day, right? And it's going to cause a lot more extra work. So then, now if you order it today, you're buying it before the 9 days. Okay?
We're gonna try.
It
Yeah,
shouldn't be
so whatever it is.
delivered.
I would be nervous pushing off the delivery too. I would be nervous. If it's listen, if it's the appliance for a basic need, it seems you need to be worried. If it's something that's extra, then one should be careful. So let's go through some of the halachas of Tisha B'Av itself. I'm going to skip things that are, I was going to share that are really the duties of the Rav, like there's certain parts of davening that we say on Tisha B'Av, and certain parts that we skip on Tisha B'Av. But okay, eating and drinking. So eating and drinking on Tisha B'Av is prohibited, as we know. Right? Fasting. There are some exceptions to this. When it comes to fasting, we're not mechanech our children under bar bas mitzvah. But one should, even if a person is not fasting or a person has children, they should be trained to eat simple foods on Tisha B'Av. It's not really a day for ice cream with a hard chocolate coating and sprinkles, right? Like if that's something they really enjoy on Tisha B'Av, we try to refrain. Even somebody who doesn't have to fast should keep the food that they're eating simple to have this understanding that we have limitations. Now, somebody who's chola with their whole body. Now, what's a chola with the whole body? What does it mean I'm ill with my whole body? A migraine headache. Migraine headache means I'm not functioning. I gotta go lay down. Okay? Person has a high fever. Person has the flu. So there's leniencies, and one doesn't have to fast. Perhaps one ask a shaila individually, but perhaps one should not even fast. It's the wrong thing to fast. But if one's not fasting, again, keep the foods simple. What if somebody is a chola, but they could fast a little bit? Ask a rav. Ask a shaila. Okay? Maybe it might be fast at least until chatzos, or fast at night and break the fast in the morning. But there's a lot of I'm mentioning this because there's space. We have to know that it's important to know that a shaila needs to be asked. There's a time where it's prohibited to fast. Most of us, it's prohibited to eat. I'm not trying to take a lenient point of view, but if somebody should be breaking their fast, ask a shaila. Okay, ask a shaila. We don't want to be a chassid shaitan, which means we don't want to be a foolishly pious person. A woman who's within 30 days of birth should not fast. What about if a woman is pregnant or nursing? So, Rabbi Yisrael Berkowitz from Eretz Yisrael, we in our Q&A, remember I printed out the other Q&A before Pesach with him, so I have that here as well before Tisha B'Av. So I'll just share some of the questions and answers that we have printed up. It's going to cover a number of different angles of Tisha B'Av. But the first question is that, in general, does a pregnant woman fasting on Tisha B'Av, a pregnant woman should try to fast on Tisha B'Av. Now, our psak in our shul, and I'm going to tell you, you don't even have to ask a shaila, and if I'm your rav, if a woman's pregnant or nursing, we're very lenient on every fast, besides for Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. Okay, Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur is going to be different. Tisha B'Av, one should try to fast, even if they're pregnant and nursing. But what if for example, people are like, yeah, what if she's in her 9th month? Generally, unless we're dealing with dehydration, the worst thing that will happen is she'll go into labor in her 9th month. There's nothing dangerous about that. Right? It's not a problem. The problem's going to be if it's too early. Right? Too early, so then obviously a person would be obligated to break their fast. So the question we asked Ritu Zilberstein, Berkowitz, is that in general, does a pregnant woman fast on Tisha B'Av if she'll be in the first days of her 9th month? For example, she's 2 days in. What if she has gestational diabetes? And he answered she should fast. There isn't really any sort of danger. At worst, she'll go into labor. However, as soon as she sees signs of dehydration, or if she believes she's going into labor, now she's a chola, and she should break her fast. And by the way, if she has diabetes, she should not be fasting in the first place. Okay. Is a pregnant woman required to fast on Tisha B'Av at all? Yes. However, the moment she sees signs of dehydration or labor, she must break her fast immediately. Can Rebbe please give clear guidelines regarding pregnant women, nursing women, or a chola she'ein bo sakana, or a person who's ill but there's no danger? I'm not feeling well, but my life's not in danger. My limb's not in danger. What are the parameters? So he said like this: for anyone that sees signs of dehydration, severe migraines, feeling nauseous, dizziness, lightheadedness, spots in one's vision, they must break their fast. Additionally, a pregnant woman should break her fast with any sign of labor. A nursing woman, if she feels if she has any real fear she will lose her milk and not get it back, she should break her fast. A person who's ill, anything that might lead to danger, even if they're not currently in danger, anything that might lead to danger. People don't realize that certain internal infections need water, or it could lead to real danger, and therefore a person has to do the research, a Rav has to do his research, but under those circumstances one should not be fasting. Now I'm going to just share some questions and answers on different topics of Tisha B'Av. Can one show Holocaust documentaries on Tisha B'Av that contain music, i.e. background music? What about all these new Lashon Hara films that they have? He answered that besides for being background music, which we learned is mutter al pi din, there's no problem with background music. The music that they have on these videos is sad, and it goes very well with the appropriate tone of Tisha B'Av. Bisman Chazal, in times of Chazal, they used to use flutes at funerals. However, from crowds are very uncomfortable with this, and we refrain from this. Although generally we try to stay away from it. A film that's there for a purpose of learning about Avas Chinam, learning how to get along, that is mutter. But if there's any sort of film that's just there for entertainment, that on Tisha B'Av this might be a little too much. Again, it's distracting from Tisha B'Av. Okay, the next one's not really Negeya, Havdalah. May one use mouthwash on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur? Nobody would come to swallowing mouthwash. So the shaila is, can I use mouthwash just to get rid of when I wake up in the morning, to get rid of the taste, I don't know what it's called, right? The morning taste.
Morning breath.
Morning breath. Or breath is for others, for me. As long as, if I'm careful, I'm not going to come to swallowing it. So he answered that it should be mutter al pi din, according to Halacha it should be allowed. However, on Yom Kippur he would be strict. He seems to say that on Tisha B'Av there's no problem. You can use mouthwash. And you wake up in the morning, just make sure to keep one's head down, and so that it doesn't come towards any sort of swallowing. So that's a little bit of a question and answer that we had on Yom Kippur. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit about Erev Tisha B'Av, the Suda?
Yes, thank you. Let's go through that halacha. So Erev Tisha B'Av, starting from Chatzos on Erev Tisha B'Av, we refrain from Torah study. Okay, we refrain from Torah study unless it's halachas that have to do with the laws of mourning and the laws of Tisha B'Av. There's a lot of Gemaras, Mishnayos that discuss the Churban, discuss the destruction. There's a lot of halachas like we're learning right now that have to do with Tisha B'Av. Right? I need to know what is permitted for me to do on Tisha B'Av, and how do I handle Erev Tisha B'Av. So that type of learning is allowed. Now the reason why we don't do learning on Erev Tisha B'Av or even on Tisha B'Av itself is because it's considered, when one has clarity in Torah, it gives one joy. That's point number one. Point number two is that we want to focus on Tisha B'Av. And that's the mitzvah sayayim. That's the mitzvah of the day. That's what our focus should really be on. So unless it's areas of Torah study that have to do with Tisha B'Av, we refrain from that. I would venture to say that if that's true, that would obviously dictate scrolling through our screens on Tisha B'Av afternoon because we're bored, is also something that we should refrain from. We should really stay focused. So if one has nothing to do, go look up something on Tisha B'Av, or they have so many beautiful, tremendous Tisha B'Av films that the Chavetz Chaim Heritage Foundation puts out, Risha Torah puts out now. All these different projects.
Torah Anytime.
Torah Anytime, right? They have all these incredible Shiurim that are available, and those types of things that we should be involved with. Now, so that's Erev Tisha B'Av starting with with chatzos. Before going into Tisha B'Av, so there is a mitzvah to eat a sudas mafseka. Suda means a meal. Mafsekas means to break, a meal that breaks. Okay. Sudas mafseka. So we eat a regular meal, and then afterwards, the custom is that we sit on the floor, close to Shkia, close to sunset, and we have a piece of bread or matzah. We have egg. Egg represents morning, and we have ash. Minimal amount of ash. Anything that's burnt. It could even be a matchstick. Right? You just touch the end of the matchstick. We'll have a little once it's burnt. Right? Burnt. Touch. Doesn't have to be any specific amount. My kids told me they love this meal. I was talking to them about. They're like, oh, is this the fast? Like, oh yeah, that's so fun. I'm like, what? It's not supposed to be fun. Like, oh, we sit on the floor and we eat the egg with the ash. Isaac loves burnt things. He's right outside. He's like, yum. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, okay, you're allowed to enjoy it, I guess. Right? As long as you're doing the right thing. So we sit on the floor, and if you have people over, we should ideally sit separate. And we have a sudas mafsekas, and we bench afterwards. Now, ideally, that should be the last thing we eat before Tisha B'Av, but if a person does it a little earlier, it is permitted still to drink. Just have in mind that, or eat, have in mind that you still plan to do that. Some say that once you have sudas mafsekas, you should stay sitting on the floor after that. There's a custom to sit on the floor from the time Tisha B'Av starts until midday on Tisha B'Av itself, when the Beis HaMikdash was completely engulfed in flames. There are those who are lenient and they say you sit on the floor and you can sit back up on a couch at least until the night of Tisha B'Av. Yeah, go ahead.
So you're not supposed to, so you have 3 men in your house, you're not supposed to be eating with each other, that's okay?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, we don't make a mazumah, if that's your right. We don't make a mazumah because we're ideally meant to be eaten individually. Now, I don't overdo it, you know. The reason my kids probably like it is because I'm not saying we make a game out of it, but we keep it light. Shouldn't be too heavy. Shouldn't be too heavy.
When you say sit on a chair, you don't mean...
A low chair.
Sit on the floor. Can we use a cushion?
Yeah, anything lower than 10 inches, for sure. 12 inches maybe. If the person has a bad back, you could sit on a regular chair. This is... If there's any sort of medical need to not sit on a low place, I forgot about that. I have to keep that in mind. I gotta make sure my back gets better before Tisha B'Av. But if there's any sort of medical need, then a person doesn't have to sit all the way on the floor. All right, we're over time.